A lot of people have no idea about their ancestors and when their ancestors were connected to the land in those stories. And from my experience, what I view, especially having spent a lot of time with Indigenous peoples, is that when we don't have a connection to our ancestries, and when I'm talking about ancestries, I'm talking about pre-colonized, pre-patriarchal ancestries, meaning going far back when we were all indigenous to some place and have that deep connection to the land and an understanding and an ontology of connection to the earth. It leaves us quite empty. And in that emptiness, we see a lot of overconsumerism. We see a lot of negative behavior. We see a lot of trauma. We see a lot of loneliness. We see a lot of violence that comes out of that not belonging. And it turns out, as humans, we need to belong in a very deep way, not in a superficial way, but truly at a deep level with the land, with our people, with a way of life that is integrated with this amazing living earth we're a part of.
Welcome back to part two of my interview with a real icon of women leadership and the climate movement. I've been aware of her, admiring her, and reading her posts, if not her books. They're very, very dense in the best possible way. Her research is incredible. She really embodies nature, and even her name, Osprey Orielle Lake, just sounds like nature. It is nature. She is nature. So thank you so much for joining me for part two to talk about your most recent book. The story is in our bones. Tell us what inspired that. What do you mean by that? The tagline is how worldviews and climate justice can remake a world in crisis. And boy, are we in crises. You and I and so many other good people are focused on the ecological crises, climate emergency, ecosystem collapse. Uh, Not enough humans are, but that's what we're working on getting more people to realize this is about all of us, our children, our grandchildren. Mother Nature is screaming at us, and you've been trying to tell people that and what we can do about it for as long as I've been doing this, 28 years. So tell us what inspired this book after a very comprehensive first book, I would say.
Thank you so much, and it's really a pleasure to have some time with you again. Thank you for yeah, this kind of dialogue. I think it's really important, and I know that there's like so many podcasts out there, and I really value ones that are trying to create meaning out of this moment and bring people's attention to the urgency of what we're facing because we need each other. We need a lot of courage. We need a lot of honesty, and we need to look things straight on. And I feel like you really do that, and I really appreciate it.
Doing it before they even had a word for podcast. We called it radio back then, green
Uh,
radio, internet, and
yes.
YouTube and all that. We know too much to stop, right? It's not even an option.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our duty and our calling, and um, our heart pulls us there.
And guess what? Being part of the solution feels so much better than just angsting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about it. So I primarily wrote this book, a big chunk of it, if you will, during the pandemic when we weren't traveling, and so I was able to really take some time on writing I had been thinking about for a long time, and then finished it after the pandemic. But um, because of my work at the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, working with women on the front lines of the climate crisis, there's a lot of stories, of course, that emerged from my years of doing this work. But also, I wanted to step back and get into a deeper dialogue about how did we get into this crisis? So if you sort of think about when you go to the doctor and you're not well, they don't just start giving you prescriptions and things. There's a process of evaluation, of looking at the root cause of the illness.
Mhm.
And so it's really the approach I took to the book. Like, how do we get to the origin of our stories and the origin of what many scholars are calling a polycrisis, which is social, economic, spiritual, every which way you think about it? We are in a crisis of the environment, all of it together. How does it weave together? How do we make meaning of it? How do we see ourselves in this moment in time? And I just loved writing this book. I mean, writing a book is always, you pull out your hair as well, but I also really enjoy the process.
Working on mine. Yeah.
It allows you to have those deeper thoughts and slow down and really look at things. And so I looked at worldviews. How did we get into this worldview where capitalism and patriarchy and colonization and imperialism and racism, all these big words, but they are these systems we're in that are quite violent and quite destructive and very unjust? How did they develop? And how do we begin to unwind that story to a deeper meaning of who we are? Because, my point of view primarily is people are very kind and loving for the most part, and that a lot of the violence and harms come from trauma that people have experienced in their life. And then they begin to enact that and position that on other people, or people grow up in this idea of supremacy over others, or supremacy over the land. And all these ideologies and worldviews are extremely detrimental. And so some of the book goes through, where do these ideas come from, and how do we then compost them and transform ourselves into something else. And that something else, I think, is about our reconnection with nature. It is about living in equity. It is about what I like to call a worldview where we're living in an animate world, where we understand the trees and the forests and the rivers and the mountains and the sky are alive, and that we can re-own and reimagine what does it feel like to live in an animate world and animate cosmology. And so it is also a spiritual journey of an inward approach to our politics. And this is also something that I'm really interested in, is understanding that our inner life is also part of our political discourse and not separating that out. And I think that women and men are capable of that, and people across the gender spectrum. But I also think most recently, women are really carrying that piece, and it's part of our leadership is to open a door for our feelings and open a door to how our emotions are key to transforming the political dial on things. And yeah, so I think that the book is quite expansive and wide ranging in terms of telling my personal story. Some of it is really a narrative about my own learning. And at the same time, it's also a lot of stories that are told by many people about how we can transform how we're living with the earth and each other. And so that was really the impetus, is how do we get back into meaning making, slow down and look at root causes, and then begin to compost those negative worldviews into something else.
Wow. So tell us a few ways that we can, or what you found that was most expansive, applicable, relevant to the moment, because you have asked the questions that, of course, need answering right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the journey begins with, which I'm not the only one saying it, but it's also like, how do we embody and really practice connecting with nature, whether it's gardening or going for walks or finding out, when you walk out your front door, what plant species are there. Some of these things might seem like, how can that possibly resolve huge global problems? Well, it's very difficult to do that if we don't stand inside of ourselves in a new way, because it's also about us transforming, not just transforming the world, but transforming ourselves. And so some of it has to do with that. Some of this has to do with also our ancestries. A lot of people have no idea about their ancestors and when their ancestors were connected to the land in those stories. And from my experience, what I view, especially having spent a lot of time with Indigenous peoples, is that when we don't have a connection to our ancestries, and when I'm talking about ancestries, I'm talking about pre-colonized, pre-patriarchal ancestries, meaning going far back when we were all indigenous to some place and have that deep connection to the land and an understanding and an ontology of connection to the earth, it leaves us quite empty. And in that emptiness, we see a lot of overconsumerism. We see a lot of negative behavior. We see a lot of trauma. We see a lot of loneliness. We see a lot of violence that comes out of that not belonging. And it turns out, as humans, we need to belong in a very deep way, not in a superficial way, but truly at a deep level with the land, with our people, with a way of life that is integrated with this amazing living earth we're a part of and this incredible universe. And most of the time, as people are, connected to their computers and their television programs and their devices, it's really easy to forget the miracle of life, to put it quite simply. And these things that seem so every day, that the sun comes up and the seasons happen, as secondary when actually they need to be primary. So how do we get the earth back into the center of the story and the depth and beauty of living in life and nature, to then refocus our politics? And so the book is a lot about steps, how to do that and the journey towards that. So that would be sort of like my first, top line description of that. But I think it's a lot through stories and reclamation of our ancestries and reclamation of our connection to the earth. These are all like some of the beginning steps. And then how do we turn that into, for me, a keen interest for me is into political analysis and political policy. And so I've spent a lot of my life like, how do we translate those things into policy because that also meets then the urgency of this moment.
Mhm. Well, I just noticed that you're a gold medalist, winner of the 2024 IPPY Awards. Tell us, because this book should be widely read and widely awarded and praised. I just love what you're saying so far, and hope everybody runs out and gets it or orders it on Amazon or wherever you get your books.
It's on all there and all the places, and also it is now also out in audiobook.
Great. And what does IPPY stand for? I've never heard of that one.
It's the Independent Publishers. I can't remember it. Independent Publishers.
Publishers Book Award? Will that
Yeah.
be
And then
the
and then it won another award recently um, for the American Legacy Award in the category of social change. So it's won a couple of awards, which I'm really proud of and excited about. Yeah.
So you have been holding events at, during UN Climate Week, San Francisco, New York. I mean, pretty much every major event. I know you have events and I try to get to them, but there's always five things going on at once. How have they grown? How have you seen interest in what you're doing? Not just in numbers, but just the faces that you see and different colors from different places around the globe.
Yeah, I think that when I started the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network in 2009, this narrative around the role of women's leadership in climate was a really there. We weren't the only ones, but it was a very small group of people doing that. And now it has really grown. I mean, I know at least six new networks of climate and women networks that have grown since then. So I'm really excited to see that that narrative is growing. And we need women at the table right now to create balance, to create a different vision of a way going forward. And women and men and people across the gender spectrum need to be working together. But the voices of women, and particularly Indigenous, Black, and Brown women, are needed more than ever because I find that when you um, look at where there is the most conflict or pain or where the harm is taking place, the solutions are also there because those are the people being impacted the most and have experienced that transformation or how to transform it. And so many women that I talk to who are experiencing hardship always tell me, we are not the victims, we are the solution. And they're absolutely right. And just to give like one stat, I presented at the Scenarios Forum a presentation that then feeds into the IPCC reports, but it was a study that was done that showed that with just a 1 unit increase in something called the Women's Political Empowerment Index, which is all over the world, it's this index which looks at country by country women's agency in economy, women's agency in mobility, women's agency in social activism, freedoms. And so it's an index that shows how that is manifested country by country. And with just a 1 unit increase, you see 11.51% decrease in carbon emissions,
Wow.
which is huge. And so, and I could give so many stats. It's just like one that popped in the top of my head right now. And everything's not about carbon emission reductions, but it's just to say that the role of women's leadership cannot be emphasized enough. If we look at so many studies and articles that came out during the COVID pandemic, that countries led by women did so much better than countries led by men. So there's a whole world that women are offering that is really essential at this time. And so, yeah, that's why the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network was started. And that space, you're saying, well, what has changed? It's like that, I think, has increased, and acknowledgement of that has increased. Pushback has also increased. Women are going forward anyhow.
Good. I call that womanifesting change, not manifesting, womanifesting. Speaking of women, and I just completed a four-part series on oceans. Sylvia Earle, of course,
Uh,
everybody's Shiro. I know you are fortunate to have spent a lot of time with her. Just tell us, how she has inspired you. I hope to have her on Code Green, so maybe you can help me. I have interviewed her before, and she's lovely, and hopefully will be available before she retires, if that's even in her mind at 90, whatever.
well, she is really, speaking of nature, she's a force of nature. And I love her dearly. I mean, talk about commitment and how she has spoken for the ocean um, and
Oh, eloquently. I say I think of all the speakers I've heard, I really just jot down every sentence. She speaks slowly, luckily, and I write fast. I can't read it afterwards when I do it handwriting, but there's something about she chooses her words carefully and they're just perfect.
yes, and I think she's also really poetic, but she's also someone who has supported me from the beginning of WECAN and believes in women's leadership. When we first started, she was one of the first people that said, this is really important. And I just saw her at Climate Week in New York in September. And, we had just like a magical moment together. And, just that support from your elders makes a huge difference. And
Her
people
deepness, as we
love
call
her.
her, with
Yeah.
affection.
And her dedication, I mean, you
Yeah.
know, sort of like, Jane Goodall bringing attention to primates. She's the one who's brought the ocean front and center to so many people. And I truly think she's one of the biggest heroes of our time. I will say that.
And I think I heard she's still scuba diving at 90 something.
Yeah. She just was on a big trip up in the Arctic over the winter time. And, she's just
Great.
continuing on.
Well, we were lucky enough to be in Antarctica in December. And wow, was that an experience? Out of this world, bottom of the world, seeing the glaciers and icebergs in full gorgeous meltdown. Gorgeous because the colors, the prisms, the blue, every shade of blue, every shade of white. And that's really what it is, blue and white, unless it's a gray day. And yet, when you realize what's causing the meltdown, it's chilling, to put it mildly, even more so than the temperatures. That's a topic for another day. I don't know if you've been to either Antarctica or the Arctic, but what happens there does not stay there. Needless
No,
to say.
no. Mm-mm.
Yeah, pretty dramatic. Okay, anything else you'd like to add? We haven't talked too much about WECAN. You've touched on it, but if you
Yeah,
invite
I
people
think
to learn more about it or to be participate in some of your events in person or online, whatever you would like to share, this is your moment to invite.
sure. Well, I think it's good for people to know that, we have a very large network around the world. We just put on a very big assembly this summer called the Global Women's Assembly for Climate Justice. It went on for 6 days, 5 hours of programming a day, and all of those sessions, they were about an hour each, are online. And I think it's a great resource for people because it went through women in forest and women in climate finance and women, indigenous women and their solutions, and women and food sovereignty, and all kinds of things, everything related to climate. So it really created a very big narrative about how we're talking about system change. What do we mean by real climate justice solutions? And it really broke things down. So I think it's and amazing women leaders from all the world. I mean, we had like 4 or 5 people per panel, and Mary Robinson was there. I mean, it was amazing. Indigenous leaders from all over the world. It was incredible. So that would be one thing I would just share as an offering. But in terms of the programs WECAN is doing, we're doing everything from like reforestation work to forest protection work. We do climate policy work. We just came out with a bunch of policy briefs for COP30 that are available for free online to really break down some of these topics and get people to understand what's going on and have those resources for themselves. We do work stopping fossil fuel pipelines. Since before Standing Rock, going back to Keystone XL. I mean, we've been on the front lines, standing in the trenches, and really fighting to stop fossil fuel expansion. And so it's wide ranging the work that we do, and people are welcome to join our newsletter, find out what we're doing when we're doing events. But it's a very large collective of women doing very powerful work at the local, global, and international level. And right now, for us, it's like one of our sayings is we can act now and we must act now, and everyone can do something, no matter how small it is or how big it is. everyone can do something, and we need everyone to do something.
Yeah,
No matter what's going on politically, the climate crisis is not going to stop. We
right.
need to listen to nature. And I would close by saying another big part of our programming is around rights of nature.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something we can all look at as a framework, the rights of nature framework, as well as
Mm.
the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. Like these are two policy pieces that really bring us into balance with Mother Earth, that are really moving an agenda forward that I think are really important. And they're both in my book. Lots of description about both of those initiatives, but it's also primary part of our programming at WECAN.
And a similar initiative connected, of course, is the ecocide movement
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make the rights of nature. Okay, let's see. It's all wonderful. I don't want to end on a negative question, but I just want to put something in people's brain next time they hear Trump talk about energy dominance. I mean, drill baby drill is obviously just the wrong message, but energy dominance, what are they even thinking? And why is that not the answer?
Well, I mean, it's more of the wealthy elite trying to consolidate power at a time of crisis. And they're doing that through the fossil fuel economy and extraction and the power that has existed. And that time is over because it is a time of renewable energy. It is a time for us to actually stop consuming so much. Because, it's really important to say it's not just about getting off of fossil fuels and then we're all going to electrify, because you still have to mine for minerals, which can be equally devastating as drilling for fossil fuels. So it's a mindset that has to shift. It's not just,
Yes.
yes, we need to go to renewables, absolutely. But we also are talking about power. We're also talking about transformation of consciousness. We're talking about changing our lifestyle. And that's why I wrote my book, The Stories in Our Bones, because in our bones, we know it's not enough to continue business as usual. Something much bigger is going on. And that's something that we need to really embrace. And for people to not be afraid of that, but be excited that we could start living in a way that we know we need to. We're all moving too quickly. Most people I know are exhausted. Most people cannot work at the pace that they're being forced to work. So like it's about a lot of things. It's coming out. It's the climate crisis or environmental degradation, but it's a systems collapse, and we need a systems approach. And that's what I'm getting at in my book, is how do we actually put all these pieces together, and and it's not about dominance, it's about reciprocity, it's about generosity, it's about giving, it's about living with respect for each other and the earth. That's what we're trying to do.
It's about regeneration. It's a word that is the buzzword. It maybe is overused, but it can apply really quite, I think, truthfully to a lot of what we need to do. And thank you so much for what you're doing. Isn't this wonderful? Look what I get to do. This is why I can't stop. But tapping into the wisdom of people like you, Osprey Orielle Lake, I can't tell you how much gratitude I have for your work, for your persistence. I persist too because of people like you whose wisdom and knowledge and experience should be widely shared. And please, if you're watching this, I hope you will subscribe to the YouTube channel at Betsy Rosenberg Interviews, Code Green. It's my new platform, but I'm certainly not new at this. Been doing it for oh so many years because these are the people that we can learn from, we can be inspired by, and why keep that a secret? We need their wisdom, your wisdom, more than ever. So please help us spread the word because I've been at this a while and this is my last shot, but I want to make it a big one because we need it. We need these people, these voices. The solutions, the solutionaries is exactly what will get us out of paralysis, fear, and doom and gloom. And it's real. It's not fake. It's very much deserving of the attention that I and others like me are putting on the solutionaries out there on all shades of green, climate being the mother of all eco challenges. But of course, there oceans, biodiversity, and then we haven't even gotten to a plastic series, which so it's all connected. That's the point. So come back to hear more about how you can make a difference, be inspired, be part of the solution instantly. Just tune in and get fired up and join us. We'll welcome you. Thanks so much.